All right, welcome everybody to the Coaches Networking Group. Glad you're here. We are recording, and today we have a special guest. James Wightman is here. Hi, James.
Good to be here.
Yeah, glad you're here. I'm gonna be as I'm talking to you, James. I want to connect with you a little bit as I'm allowing some people to come into the room. I'm gonna let some people into the room while I'm talking with you. Um, and I want to let everybody know. So James and I actually knew James before James knew me, because last year James did the AJC, which is the On Coaching School. And he did a wonderful series on YouTube that somehow, some way I became familiar with. We have a mutual friend named Otto Collins and colleague named Otto Collins. And Otto sent me a message and he said, have you seen the YouTube series with James Whiteman? And I had just seen of it on somebody else's Facebook. I said, yeah, I watched a little bit of that. He said it's excellent. And I want to acknowledge you, James, for the one video that I watched that really made the biggest difference. They were all amazing, the ones that I watched, and the one that made the biggest difference was the one with Jamie Damsker that you had the conversation with Jamie Damsker. You partnered up with him. You talked about partnering up with him in one of the exercises in the school and connecting. And I watched that and I really got a lot from that around the enrollment process and like not going deep with somebody. This was what I got from it. And I want to share it here because it's important is, creating a separate space to go deep with someone, not coaching someone in public is what I kind of got from that. Because I don't know if anybody else here does this or has done this, but when I first started coaching, one of the things that I did was, I go to the post office and try to find out what people's deepest fears were and what their biggest dreams were while I was at the post office. Has anybody else done this? Have you done this? It's like, what's your biggest fear? Tell me right here in the post office. I want to know, trying to really like putting people in a corner, like, hey, you gotta get away from this guy. Um,
You're going
and
to send it off into a letter.
what's that?
You're going to take their fear, put it in a letter, and send it off.
Yeah, we're gonna burn it outside of the post office, right? Like put your fear down, we're gonna burn it. Yeah. Get rid of it. Here we go. You're gonna have a transformation whether you want it or not. Come here, you son of a gun. Um, but when I listened to that
Yeah, I
masterclass or
can
that
explore
YouTube
because I don't
video,
like to see it. Yeah.
let's see, who do we want to mute here? Let's mute. I think there we go. Good. If you're not on mute, please mute yourself. Uh, but yeah, so you kind of get the gist of it, you know? It's like create a separate space for a conversation. That was really meaningful for me. And also after that, because of that, got into Jamie's world and he did an event called the Michelangelo Distinction, and I was part of that. And then I had a conversation with Jamie, and he asked me about doing the school, and I said yes to the school this year because you were a big part of me saying yes to the school because of what you created. And that means a lot to me out of something that you created. Like it affected my life in a positive way. I'm really excited to see what comes from that. So I want to acknowledge you for that and say thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So that you shared a little bit with me that everybody here may not know, but I'd love to hear. I think what could serve people is around the beginning of your journey. You shared a little bit about that. And if that's where your heart wants to take us, I would love to turn it over to you and see what do you feel like would serve here?
Yeah, and thank you so much for creating this, Robert. I love the way that you have created such a space, the way that you share, um, the lessons from your own journey, and I appreciate the invitation here to really make a difference in people's lives and their coaching journey. And so that's so wonderful to hear that those videos have made an impact on you. And I'm excited for the space we have here today to really make a difference for each person here and for anyone that listens to this recording, if there is one. Um, in terms of, coming in today, what I wanted to do is make a difference for each person. That's literally the way that I operate and I try to set things up. So I have um, some training concepts that I came in with that I thought could be helpful, and I'd love to share about my journey. So it all kind of strings together. Um, I think what would be helpful for me though is if each person just in the chat, if they have something that is pressing or where they sense they are at in their journey, I would love to know that because as I share, it helps me know some different things to speak to that I wouldn't otherwise think of. Um, so sometimes as I'm on calls with people, sometimes they speak about how they're still trying to create conversations. And for others, they're having conversations and then they're going, well, why aren't these people becoming clients? Um, and then for others, sometimes it's monetary. Sometimes they say, I'm serving people, some of them are paying, but I still haven't made this a full-time profession yet. And so, wherever you find yourself, I would love it if just in the chat you could let me know where you sense you are at. There is nothing wrong. There's no question that is off limits. Because to me, I come from the viewpoint of anything that's happening for us, as soon as we bring that out, as soon as we share it, as soon as we bring it into the light, it allows us to see it objectively. It allows us to either solve it or heal it, whatever it might be. And so that's the approach that I'd love to take. And so I'll open up with the earlier days, some of the challenges that I've had. Um, yeah, let me see. A few people are putting some things in the
Yeah.
chat. Yep, getting more conversations, just starting my coaching journey, finding people to have conversations with, how to best approach conversations. Excellent. I love all of this. So I will absolutely speak to that. And then I thought we could open it up for some live Q&A and some live coaching. How's that sound, Robert?
That sounds really good, and we got some really great responses here as well that you've read. And I'd love it if everybody here is called. I'd love to hear from everybody that's here in the chat. So wonderful. Yeah, that's
Perfect.
perfect.
So yeah, let me open this up. And there's I had tagged you in it, Robert, but there's a post that we could send to everybody, and it's that I did not make money for the first 5 years of my business, and that was very challenging to look at. And I guess, what's occurring to me now is that I should give a little bit of an intro about myself because you're probably like, who is this guy? Even though Robert did a wonderful intro. I have gone through the experience, just as you heard, of not making money for the first 5 years of my business, all the way to people paying $30 for a session, right? Moving to that all the way to receiving 120K for a year from a client to help them and their team. And so I have seen a lot on my journey, and money goes up and down, money comes and goes. And so I always like to remind people of that. It's about our consistency and the rhythm and the steps that we're taking. And it's really easy to get caught up in each person's individual system and maybe wonder why it's not working for you. And so, yeah, so I'll start with my journey and what I would say the main things that I really want you to get out of this conversation are number one, I want you to have your own system that works for you, right? And it doesn't have to be copycatting somebody else's. I mean, obviously, you may take inspiration from other people, but use what works for you because each person is different and that's what makes you, you. And the other thing that we're going to talk about is I'm going to talk about the concept of service, which you've probably heard spoken about. And I have personally always felt a tug of war of that between how to serve, how to want to make money. And so the lesson that I want you to get out of the stories that I'm going to share is I want you to fully own that you want clients and you want money. And simultaneously, you can still be of service. That always felt very challenging for me. So we're going to talk about that. Perfect. So, yes, I did not make money for the first 5 years of my business. And I would help people, much like Robert, anywhere I was with somebody or in a conversation, I'd hear what was happening for them, I'd give them advice. People would say, wow, that was really helpful. Sometimes we would even make dedicated time and I'd listen to what's happening for them and give recommendations. And I still wasn't making money. And this went on for quite a few years, and it was very confusing to me of how could I be helping people, but I am not necessarily making money. And so I started um, to listen to inspirational speakers, on Instagram or YouTube at the time. And it would just be more inspiration piled on more inspiration. People would say to start a business, go all in, leave your job. And I've done many of those things. And so you don't have to do it the way that I did it. But ultimately, that was helpful. That was motivation. But it still wasn't the framework of a business. It still wasn't the process of a business. I wasn't showing up as a professional business owner. I was showing up as a support person, an advice giver, a helper, which is wonderful. Um, but it's important to be a professional and it's important to know your craft, right? Just as somebody could be, I lived in New York City and someone could be a wonderful singer on the corner and they're busking and they have something out for people to put money in, or they're going through the train, the subway, and they're performing and people give them money. And I always thought it was fascinating. How could this person be an amazing dancer? How could this person be an amazing singer? And yet they're finding themselves in a subway or on the corner and they don't have a successful career. And some people do that. Some people love it and they start that way. However, to be to have a career, you want to show up as a professional. And so you can have your craft, which I'm sure you have. This is why you're here. People have found value in what you have to share, just as they did with what I was sharing. And on the other side of that, there's knowing business. Now, when I thought of knowing business, that felt very complicated to me. I would hear people talk about leads and marketing and all these words, and it felt very, very complicated. And I'm very much a just plain simple communicator. Someone talks about leads and I go, you mean just have a conversation with somebody, who may be a potential client. Um, and so people talk about marketing and, they talk about funnels and systems. And I think you mean just simply sharing the results that I've had with people, communicating what I do powerfully in a way that lands. And so there's a lot of business practices that at the time felt very like, oh my gosh, I got to wrap my head around this. People make it sound so complicated. It's almost like people are speaking in a medical language or scientific. And that's how I related to it at the time. And so I always thought things felt very complicated. So during that 5 years, I did so many things. I went for trainings around business. And I traveled to Texas to do an intensive with a mentor. And, they said after 2 or 3 days, you'll have everything you need. You can create clients. Well, it took me about a year, year and a half of working through what they said to do, of talking to people and doing these different activities. And it felt very confronting to me because there would be fears that would come up. And I imagine you probably feel this in some ways as well, right? Anytime you reach something new, there's fears or stories that come up. And that's part of the growth. That's part of the spiritual path of moving into your next iteration, your next authorization, your next level. And so I would do so many different things. I found myself getting trained in NLP, and I was processing trauma, and there was tapping in there, and the eye movements to try and heal things. I had to follow a pen, and I'd go to a therapist, and I did so many different things. I did the landmark forum, and I have to tell you, all of these activities were very helpful in my own growth, in releasing emotion that was coming up. And simultaneously, I discovered that they weren't required for me to take the action. They weren't required for me to take the next step. And so they benefited my personal growth. But it's funny, after going through all that, I look and I say, well, did I really have to, work with a money energetics person to make money? Did it help? Did it make a difference? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Um, and so after going through all of this, and this went on for a period of 5 years, that I thought I really just need to become practical. And so during it, someone would sign up for maybe 3K for 3 months, or somebody would pay me $100 for a session. And I realized each time that happened, it didn't actually have anything to do with the healing modality that I sought out. Well, it was beneficial, it wasn't required. And so yeah, this went on for a period of years. And then that's when I found Steve Chandler's work, Ankush, and things started to make more sense. And so that's where I started to develop a really simple framework, my own rhythm of how I would do things, right? Because they would say, connect, um, what is it, Robert? Connect, invite, propose. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it's like yeah, connect. Let's see. That's a good
Not to put you
question.
on the spot.
Yeah, but I think that I'm pretty sure it's basically connect with someone, create a invite them to a conversation,
Yep.
serve. Yeah, connect, invite, serve,
Make a
propose.
proposal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, perfect. Thank you. So, I discovered that, and I started playing around with that work, and I loved it. It was very clear. And so there started to be a difference. When I went to marketing programs and how to write posts and do all those different things, it was unclear of how much influence I had over what I was creating. It almost felt like I was putting a post out or putting something out, and then I did not know whether anything was coming from that. I did not know whether people would see it, whether they resonated, if the likes meant anything, or people would comment, and would anything happen there. And so when I found, this service-based model of, connect, share an experience, propose, that felt very helpful. And I was able to track that. Who am I connecting with? If I'm not connecting with anybody, well, certainly I can't share an experience, and then no client will be made. And that is what I would refer to, right, as the lead generation. And I remember, years ago when I had found this, and she's my wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, I would work on sending a message to someone to catch up or connect. And it took me a week to write the first message. And I kept doing so many different drafts and iterations. And I'd go to my girlfriend and say, oh, what do you think of this one? And we'd be on, maybe the sixth version. And she'd be going, it doesn't look any different to me than the first version. I'm like, but I changed this word and that word. And I thought that just this small little thing would be the thing for somebody to say yes. So anyway, a week passes, and I finally send the message, and somebody says, yeah, I'd love to connect. It's been a while. And so I started to develop a framework, right? To not only have that connection with someone, to generate a conversation, which is the playlist that Robert was talking about, and the interviews that I've done of how do people generate conversations. And then how do you actually begin to share an experience? And what happens is most people actually go too fast, and that's what I did for so long. because I wanted a client. And so I didn't slow things down. You've probably heard that terminology a lot, to slow things down. So what I started to do is I'd take more time, not necessarily to give sessions, but to have conversations. And then we'd have a session. And then I'd ask them if they want to continue. And then that's where I moved into a proposal. And so what happens for a lot of people, and this happened to me, is I would share an experience, then I'd try to propose. And I was actually not slowing down enough. I was combining too much. I was trying to follow the process too much to a T and not following my own instincts, my own intuition. And so what happens for people, which is what happened for me, is I would help and I wasn't sure how to propose, or I would help and I'd propose right away. And what happens is when somebody says yes to sharing an experience, it's your opportunity to start to have some gentle leadership, to have some gentle invitations to get clear yeses and clear nos. And so I'd gone through that experience and I started to have more of a rhythm, right? It started slow at first. And I still wake up today. There's still moments where I go, who am I speaking with? But rather than it being like, oh my gosh, who am I speaking with? Is there anyone this week? It's more about being present with the openness of not knowing. And what if your not knowing is actually an open space for creativity in which you get to connect or meet people that you haven't before or connect with people that you haven't in a long time? And so it's about shifting the relationship with your experience of the not knowing.
Yeah.
So I want to
Can I
take a
share a
breath
little
here
bit?
because I know I've been going for a
Yeah.
little bit. Go for it, Robert.
Yeah, I want to share my experience. It's funny, I was talking about this morning actually with my girlfriend's dad and was talking about when I did the RMT, the Robbins Madonnas training, which some people here have done the RMT training. And one of the things that we did in the RMT training, which a lot of coaching programs do, was we studied other people's process and what they did. So we learned what to do. And in that particular program, we learned what Tony Robbins did. So we learned Tony Robbins strategies, Tony
Mhm.
Robbins actions, Tony Robbins doings. And so I was very, very sold on the fact that I needed to know what to do and when to do it. So I needed to have a list of strategies that I could go to whenever something happened. And what I didn't realize until I was introduced to the being movement, the service movement, Onkush, Steve Chandler, Steve Hardison, was what I've heard Steve Hardison say once is, NLP is great, but you can do all those things and not be that. And if you're not being it, you can do all the actions that Tony Robbins does, but if you're not being who Tony Robbins is being, you don't have the energy behind what you're doing. It doesn't have the same result. And what you're speaking to, James, wakens that in me is it's in that not knowing and the energy of being. It's like that. I don't know. I think there's a big. It's very faith based to me. It's like
Mhm.
being open to what possibilities are there. But that was a big shift for me whenever I had that realization was like, if I'm not being who Tony's being, I can do all the strategies and say all the language and I can do all those things, but it's not going to have the same result. And then I started to open up to like, what's my way of being? Like, what is my way of being instead of trying to be like Tony or trying to copy or trying to be like this or trying to, like you said earlier, what's this person's process? Oh, I have to learn this because they were successful. And so I love what you're pointing towards, and that's kind of a little bit of my experience around that. And that was a miracle for me when I had that shift, because then I realized I can just show up and be myself. I don't have to be like anybody else. And it was a freedom. It took a lot of weight off my shoulders. I didn't have to have it right. I didn't have to have it this way or that way or remember anything. I could just show up and be myself
Mhm.
and be present. And sometimes that's hard to do. Sometimes there's energy. Like even today, I could say, Yep. I have some anxious energy inside of me today. Here I am. I'm showing up anyway. It's
Hmm.
part of how, this is part of how it goes. Like, say yes, show up, do your best. Here we are. Yeah. And I'd love to hear, I think maybe where this is the direction James was going. I'd love to hear in the chat, what are you hearing in this conversation and what James shared and what I've shared? What is helpful to you in this? What's meaningful? What are you hearing in this that is making a difference for you? I'd love to hear in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, Robert, because yeah, it's this element of, use the terminology being. Sometimes I may say shifting the relationship with something. Just as people can experience, whether it's fear or anxiousness or whatever might be coming up in the process, um, there's rapid response stories. And so when we don't take those as truth and instead choose what we want to create, the way that we want to show up for ourselves, it really changes things. Just as two people could be sitting on a bench and they experience the park differently. Neither is good or bad or right or wrong. It's just one person might be frustrated and another person is going, wow, today's an amazing day. And so at any opportunity, we can shift the relationship with what's happening. Excellent. Let me take a look at these. Yeah, difference between personal growth and doing what's required professionally, finding your rhythm naturally. Yeah, serve. Yes, excellent. The invitations feel like manipulation to me. Like if all the previous interaction get tinted. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Veronica. Perfect. So I'd love to, um, yeah. Is it okay if I continue, Robert? Perfect. So I love what Veronica is talking about because that's something that has come up quite a bit for people, and that is something that I tried to navigate myself. And so I get that things can feel like manipulation. Um, So I'm just going to take a big breath into this, and I have quite a few notes here. So Veronica, anything I'm saying is not directed at you. It's something that I have pre-prepared, and so sometimes I can get fired up about. So choose what is useful to you, and that goes for anybody. I want you to imagine that you are going into a store, a clothing store, and if maybe you're trying clothes on, if there's something you don't like, just put it back. If you like it, you can keep it. And so I think this is a wonderful, wonderful segue. So, what I would say is with service, there's a concept of connecting with people, reaching out, being of service. And when it comes to the invitations, when it comes to making money, people can fall into that feeling like there's manipulation or they shouldn't charge. Or they that somebody shouldn't pay them. And what I want to actually invite you to do is to own that you want to make money. I want you to own for yourself that you want to create clients. Because if you don't do that, I would offer that you are being disingenuous. Because if you simply want to help people, if you simply want to serve people, you could go to a soup kitchen, you could volunteer as at a nonprofit. There are other things that you could be doing with your time. And so if you simply want to help people, I would encourage you to find those things, to leave coaching and not continue. That being said, I don't think that's why you're here. I think you're here because you do want clients. You do want to serve. You do want to make a difference in people's lives. And one of the best ways that you can make a difference for people is for them to pay you to do the work in a committed way. And so, what I would say is that there's a couple things that happen. There's some nuances here. When you are generating conversations, you could be reaching out to people, you could be connecting with people. And so I want you to picture a car. I want you to picture yourself driving a car. And in that car are two things. There is service and there is I want clients. And what we want driving in the front seat is service. And what we want in the back seat is I want clients. Meaning, what is the person feeling from you? What is the experience that you are creating? Just as you could be in a store or you could be in a conversation with someone and you can feel when somebody's pushing something on you and you want to push back. You can also feel when someone makes an unattached invitation and you feel safe to answer either way. I would offer that this is similar. So when you're connecting with people, you are, of course, you're doing this because you want to create clients and you want money. So I think of this as an entry point. The way we all find the service path is because we want clients and we want money. That is an entry point. I view this as more of a spiritual path. It's a spiritual practice. Now that that is my entry point, what is the way that I'm going to choose to show up? What is it that I am going to bring to what I'm creating? If I just am coming from the place of I want clients and I want money, if that's the place that I'm coming from and I'm putting that on somebody else, then that is not fair to them. That is not what we're wanting to create. However, when we can recognize and own that we want that and we choose what's the place I'd like to come from, that's where for me, I'd say, you know what, I'd like to come from a place of love. I'd love to make a difference in people's lives. And I'm not going to put pressure on them to have to sign up with me. And so I may be connecting with people because I want to create clients. I'm not putting that on them. And I'm in conversations. And when I do hear something from somebody that I could help them with, that I could make a difference in their life, and I've listened and I've been a great listener, what I may do at the end of a conversation is I may say, this is something that you've talked about. I can help people with this. Is this something that you would want more support with, or would you want to talk more about this? And there's no attachment there. Someone can give a clear yes or a clear no, right? Someone can say, no, I'm okay. I say, great, perfect. If you ever do want to talk more about it, just let me know. I've loved catching up with you. And you could even send them things that are helpful, right? Or they might say, yeah, I'd be interested in that. And then you could say, great. I loved catching up today. Let's set up some time where we can really focus on you. And I'd love to hear more specifically what's happening. And so there's a couple things that are happening in that I really want you guys to get, that I had to wrap my head around. Because sometimes what happens for people is they are trying, people are, how would I say this? People sometimes fall into talking about themselves. You feel like, oh, in order to make this good or respectable, I need to talk about myself. Here's what I want you to get. They did not sign up to a conversation to help you with the challenge you are going through. You are there listening, right, to them. And that's who you are in the world. You are a coach. And so when you own this as your profession, I am a coach. This is my profession. I mean, if you were on with a lawyer and you were talking about that you had something happening legally, they might say, I'm happy to talk to you a little bit more about this, right? Just to find out like what's going on and I can point you in the right direction. But if you were talking about something, the lawyer's there and they aren't offering anything, you might be going, oh, okay, maybe they just didn't, maybe they didn't want to help me. So when you own this as your profession, it helps people be more open. It helps people know that they could ask you about these things. And so here's what I had to remember. I'm not putting problems or other things on another person. This is a gift to them because most people in their life are just dishing out advice. Most people are telling them what to do, or they aren't even listening. They don't even have the space to share. Nobody else in their life brings the level of listening that you bring. And so if you are a beneficiary to that, you're probably connected with other coaches, but the average person does not have that in their life. They're usually busy, they're working, they're going home, they're between activities. So the space for them to share is rare. And then, even if they do, for somebody to truly listen is rare. And then for somebody to say, hey, I'd be happy to talk with you more about this. Would you like that? That is a true blessing, a true gift to them, because otherwise you're just assuming that they're going to resolve this in their life, and they very well could go on for the next 20 years. They could go on to their deathbed with nobody having actually listened to the thing that's within them. uh, you might assume that they've gone on to another coach. You actually might be the perfect person for them because you are the only one that reached out, or you are the only one that they're actually going to share that with. So when you hold back, when you don't make invitations, um, you are just assuming somebody's going to have something taken care of, when really you might be the only person making an invitation. And it kind of goes with the territory, right? With the invitations. When you make an invitation, again, unattached, it simply gives people an opportunity to organize themselves. You know what? I really don't want help with this. Okay, great. I don't want to work with somebody who doesn't want to solve the things in their life. How beautiful that I asked. So I'm not wondering and about this person and hanging on to this. And when you do make an invitation, then when somebody says yes, it's like, great, they've taken a step forward. They're trusting me here. And then you get to shift that into sharing an actual experience. Um, and so I'm just going to pause there. I saw quite a few people writing. What's sticking out? What's been most helpful to you so far, from this segment of what I'm sharing? Um, I'd love to hear. Yeah. Perfect. Veronica said people assume it will always be free. Yeah, and it probably will be until you fill up your practice, right? Because once you fill up your practice, then you can choose. You could be selective of the people, right? You could be selective, and maybe there's only a certain level or of person that you show up with, or the way they show up. Maybe you're choosing to work with that person, and maybe that person's not right for you, so you refer them to somebody else. Or you know, you may have a full practice and some people choose to charge, right? They might say, great, I'm happy to spend some time with you. And that's probably when you have more inquiry, more referrals. And you can say, great, to reserve a spot, I want you to put this amount of money down. And so as you fill your practice, things become easier. And so when it comes to service, you could share an experience. And then this is where your gentle leadership and gentle invitations are important, right? Where let's say you share an experience, and then when you ask someone, was this helpful? You can say, great. Would you be interested in doing more of this? Um, and somebody could say, yeah, I'd be interested in talking about what doing more of this would look like. Or they might say, no, I'm all set. And that's great. That is the unattached part. I served somebody today. I made a difference and I shared a session with them. If they don't want to continue, that's totally okay. Why am I going to get hung up on somebody who doesn't want to continue? As my old mentor would say, some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. The more we get hung up on the person that it doesn't want it, we're just spending all our time, energy, and attention on the person who doesn't want it, the person who doesn't pay. And not that there's nothing inherently bad about that. It's just I don't think that's what you're wanting to create. And so you could still maintain a relationship with them, right? You don't want to say, "Oh, you're dead to me. You wanted this for free. You didn't want to pay me. You didn't want to continue." You don't do that. Say, great, they just weren't ready right now. They're not yet, or for whatever reason, they had something occurring that uh, it wasn't a yes for them in that moment.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
have a list
Okay.
or something. Yeah,
I want to share a little bit and then we'll open it up for some questions. How do you feel about that? I just want to share a little bit. One
sure.
thing that I think would really serve people here is, um, I love that not yet because when I first did, this is another little thing. When I first started coaching, if somebody didn't sign up, yeah, I was like, okay, never talking to them again. And that's definitely not the way that I've seen that is a really great way to build relationships. Maybe if somebody never becomes a client, that's okay too. But I wanted to serve around the difference between invitation and obligation.
Hmm.
It's a really great distinction because who knows the difference? What's the difference between invitation and obligation? Do you know the difference? I love this as an invitation. If somebody says no, it doesn't change how you feel. It doesn't change how you think or feel. It's like, okay, cool. That's an invitation. An obligation, if it's an obligation, you say, hey, I have this thing for you, and they say no, and you go, what? No, they said no. Oh my goodness, I must have screwed it up. That's the difference between an invitation and an obligation, which I have shared a video from Devin Vandison. He's going to be in here in January sharing with us. But there's a little, like a few minute video where he talks about the difference between invitation and obligation. And it's okay to have an obligation and just being honest, like, okay, I had some attachment to that. Cool. Yeah, sometimes me too. Sometimes me too. And I love what you're sharing. And when you say share an experience, that's like the same as a conversation, correct?
No.
Different?
Um, yeah, different. And I'm happy to share this with anyone. I have a training where I walk through this in more detail. But before I share an experience, I actually have a conversation. Different than when I was catching up or connecting with somebody, because I want to carve out time to find out exactly what's important to them
Hmm.
and what would make a difference in their life. Get into the details of what's happening. And then I make an invitation to share an experience. And so with each of these invitations, I'm viewing them as almost like a micro commitment, right? There's an invitation to connect, there's an invitation to, would you want help or support with that thing? There's an invitation to having a conversation. There's an invitation to share an experience. There's an invitation to uh, do work in a more committed way. Sometimes I might do a couple sessions with somebody. And so to me, I really slow things down. I really take my time with somebody because we're still assimilating to one another. We're still seeing how we feel with one another. They're still seeing, is this actually helpful? Does this make a difference? And with each of those, I'm having a sense of where somebody is at just in the process of becoming a client.
Hmm. Will you share the distinction between sharing an experience, creating a conversation, and a session? What are the three different? I'd love to hear the distinction between those three different
Yeah.
things.
So when I'm connecting with somebody, I'm more just listening, catching up, and honestly, 99% of the time when you catch up with somebody, or you're just, you meet them and you're getting to know them and you're asking questions, you're hearing someone, you're becoming present with them. Um, I'm not pushing anything on somebody. I'm purely listening, and listening can happen online too, right? In some ways, you could see that someone's posting about a challenge or something, and you could always let them know that, hey, I'd love to hear what's happening, and then you can have that connection and actual catch up. But so that's that, and then I may maneuver it, not maneuver it, and move it to I would call it I call it getting the lay of the land. I've heard something in our previous conversation. I've asked them, would you like to speak more about this? Would you like help or support with that? And I'll say, great, let's just set up some time so I can hear, what's happening for you. And in that time, I simply hear what's happening for them. And then the question becomes, um, you know, if I'd love to share an experience with you, if we were to do that, um, what's the main thing you would want to work on most, right? And then we'd say, oh, out of the things that we've spoken about, I want to talk about this.
Mm.
And
We
then
have a
say,
great,
great. Then it
there's
moves
a,
into, great, let's set up some time. Because otherwise, they don't know where they're at with you. So when you make invitations, they also clearly know where they're at. So when you hold back on an invitation, people are like, am I just catching up with this person? What's happening? And when somebody has offered or they said, yeah, I'd want help with something like this, then they've kind of given you the baton and are saying, yeah, you can gently lead me. I want to be led. If I knew how to solve this, I'd probably be doing it. Right? Um, did that answer your question, Robert?
yeah, I think so. I think so. And I see we have Christine has in the chat. She asked a really great question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Christine, would you like to come on video and or come on to audio and ask your question? I'd love to have you come on.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was a little tired, so I was lying down while listening.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay.
Oh, that's all right.
so yeah, basically, I really like this process, and my question was, when you set that up, I feel when somebody offers me help and I know that they are a coach, I would feel like if they don't say, is it going to be a paid thing? Is it going to be free? I'm going to feel really like I'm floating in the air, and I would probably say no, just because I wouldn't even know, does it have a price point? What price point? And so on. So how do you navigate that in a way that you're not just like dumping it on them, but letting them know that process.
Yeah. So, usually if you've been in a conversation with someone, let's say you hear something and, maybe you ask that question. And there's different variations of this, but essentially you hear something, you say, hey, I know you were mentioning this. Um, I'd be happy to share some time with you to help you with this or to support you with that. Um, would that be helpful to you? And when so you could say share some time, you could say give some time, and that way it just makes it really, really clear for somebody that that you aren't charging them, and it's more relaxed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess the share sometime for me is still maybe because I'm not a native speaker, I would still be cautious. Is that gonna be a charged session? But when you say gift sometime, it's more clear to me.
Yeah. So you get to So there's a couple things I think about, right? Part of leadership is I would have a mentor of mine would say, don't communicate so people understand. Communicate so it's impossible for people to misunderstand, right? That they don't have a single question happening. Um, so it sounds like you could use the word gift.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, or gift you an experience, gift a session. You could use terminology like that because it sounds like for me, I would trust that somebody would ask, "Hey, is this charge or is there a charge for this or anything?" And that's when you could say, "No, I'm happy to share this with you. I'm happy to gift this to you, or this is my gift to you." Um, so I think you could do a couple things. One is you could just make sure you frame it in such a way that it's a gift, or you could have trust that if somebody has that concern, that they will ask. I'm hearing for you that maybe you were uncertain in the past, and so you've told people no. Um, but yeah, that's the way that I presently think about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. I like this. I also like this emphasis on actually the agency of this other person. Uh, yeah, I've been in a situation just recently where I was just suddenly somebody offering me 6 sessions, and I was like, "Am I buying a package right now?"
Yeah, that's not, yeah, that one sounds a bit confusing.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
guess that's like meeting someone and go, would you like to go on 6 dates, right? It's like, well, we haven't even gone on the first one, right? And so thank you for that question.
Thank you. I appreciate.
Yeah. Um, and the other metaphor that I like to use as well is I've talked about service and owning that you want clients and to create money. I like to use a relationship as a metaphor, right? So somebody might say, you know what, I would really love a significant other. I want to, get married and have kids and really build a life. And then once they're aware of that, they say, okay, I'm gonna date people, right? Well, you don't date the first person and go, "Hey, you're going to be it. We're going to end up with our life together." And so you simply date and you get to know them and you feel a certain synergy or energy together. And some people are a yes, some people are a no, and some people you spend a little time with, and sometimes you meet that person and you say, "You know what? I could spend the rest of my life with them." And so, similarly, when you're coming from service, you can bring love and care and service to people, help them solve problems, make a difference in their life, and without the attachment of "you're going to be my client." So I just want to use that as an example. Um, but let's see, Veronica, you said, but when is the proposal or shift to asking for a paid service? Yes, sure. So let's say you share the experience with somebody. And sometimes I like to I call it a pre-frame for somebody, right? So let's say I'm sharing an experience. Um, I could say, great, it's been great talking to you. I want to share a you're gonna have your coaching experience here. And um, at the end, if you want to talk about doing more, we could do that. But otherwise, I just want to make sure that this is a powerful coaching experience with you. There's no pressure to do that. So if that's been a thought in your mind, you can just set it to the side and we can look at that at the end. How's that sound to you? And somebody will usually go, "Oh, that's great. I've been wondering about that. I'd love to just focus on this session." Great. Because otherwise, they are wondering, am I paying? What's happening? And so you could do a little bit of a pre-frame there and then just do your session, however you do your session. And then at the end, you could ask them, how was the session? Um, and somebody, "Oh, it was a good session. Oh, what did you like about it? Or what was helpful to you?" "Well, we did this. This was helpful. This made a difference." And great. Would you like to talk about doing more? What would you like to do? "Yeah, I'd be open to talk about doing more of this." Great. Let's set up some time so we can look at that and see what coaching experience would be best for you. That's the way that you, right, make the shift from the experience to making a proposal to sharing more about the service. And again, unattached, a clear yes or no from somebody. And what I would say is some people they share an experience and they're like, "Hey, do you want to hear about the package or do you want to talk about doing more?" And then they start sharing costs and all these other things. Meanwhile, this person is still trying to process their insight. Now, some people say, "Oh, well, if somebody really likes your coaching, they're going to ask you how they can continue." Um, that has happened sometimes, um, but I'm not relying on that. I'm going to show up as a professional. I'm going to make a clear invitation. And sometimes I'll give the space for somebody to ask that for that to come from them. But in my experience, usually someone's kind of drunk off of the insights or the experience of the session that they're going, "Wow." And so that's the last thing they're actually thinking about. They're kind of sometimes they're just processing from that session. And so that's where I'll ask, would you like to talk about what doing more of this could look like?" And to me, that just makes a clear yes or no. Clear for me, clear for them. And again, we aren't kicking them to the curb. We are actually continue to maintain the relationship and build a relationship, whatever their answer is.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to take some space here. We have 4 minutes left for this container, and I want to take some space to do a few things. One is I'd love to hear from everybody in the chat from this conversation. What's one thing that you can take from today? What's one inspired action that you can step out with? One simple inspired action from today that you can take from today. I'd love to hear that in the chat, or what's your insight? If you don't have an inspired action, what's your insight? For me, there's two. One is slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Like relationships take time to build, and I can see where I have rushed in the past, rushed relationships. And I love what you were sharing as well, James, with proposal as well. Sometimes after a coaching experience, and trying to tag the proposal at the end of that can be too much with what's happening from the experience. So one of the things that I have created is I'll create a proposal, the proposal conversation separately from the coaching experience. Like, talk about, was this valuable? Is this something you would like to continue? Or they'll ask me, how do I work with you? And then I'll say, well, hey, how about we set up another space for that so we're not rushed and we have plenty of space. That has really been great. I see Taylor got several things. Slow down, don't force. Have a system that works for you. They don't always look for other people's systems. I love that. Um, Find your own. I love that too. And I also love, James, your metaphor of relationship and the lawyer. Because if you go to a lawyer, the lawyer, I have seen this as myself as a coach, he doesn't talk about how, what he can do for you. Like any lawyer I've ever been to, they're there to hear to find out, what do I want? And there's another side to that. For anybody who gets coached, like me having my questions before I go to a lawyer, if I ever go to a lawyer, I have all my questions like written out because that time is very sacred and it costs a lot of time, money for the time. So I'm always ready. Like I have my questions of what I'm going to ask and what I want to know. And that's a way that you can prepare for your sessions as well with your coaches when you're being coached. And I love the other way around. Like we're there to listen and find out, what does this person want? What do they want to learn? What do they want to get from this? So I love that. And I want to acknowledge you for coming here and sharing with us your space, your time, and being part of this. It's really, really meaningful. I really appreciate it. Let's see what else we have in the be authentic to accepting coaching as a profession. Yeah, own your coaching, own it. I'm here to make money. Inspired acts, have at least one inspired conversation a day. Gail says, create my own authentic coaching style and rhythm. I love that. And need to take your time and think who you want to talk to today. Awesome. Do you have any closing remarks, James? Thank you so much for being here again.
Yeah, I think what I like to always remind people is wherever you are at is the hardest it will be, especially because at any time you're simply learning what's next for you in your process. So whether you're generating conversations, whether you're still figuring out your system, or maybe you are a more seasoned professional and right now you're figuring out how to raise your rates, whatever it might be, where you're at and what you're working on is the most challenging it will be because you're starting it. And so it can only get easier as long as you give it the time, energy, and intention. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think that feels good, Robert. Um, what's the best way for me to get, if I have some goodies for them, what's the best way for me to share that with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say probably anybody who's interested in getting those goodies, you can connect with James on Facebook, or you can, if you're not able to find him on Facebook, just reach out to me. I'll get you connected with James, and I can give everybody your email that's interested. and we'll get you all connected. Plus, you're in the group as well, so you can reach out to James in the networking group. So I
Yeah.
think that'd be the best way. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's
awesome.
perfect. Yeah, and then yeah, if they either Facebook or jamwhiteman.com is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, James. And please check out the YouTube. I shared the YouTube video in the group. You can connect to James's YouTube through that as well, so you can get all the conversations that are coming up in there. All right.
Perfect. Thank you,
All
everybody.
right. Love y'all. See ya. Have a great day. See you. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.